Hello, everybody. Today I am interviewing Janine, who is a life coach and an author. And I met Janine at what were we doing together? Oh, I know, we're doing Sarah's List Builders course. And I just was really intrigued with Janine's story. And especially because it pertains to the area in which I help women. And yeah, it was just, and she's written a book. And it was just like, oh my goodness me, I have to interview this woman. And so I did a little bit of a Google, and you talked, Janine, about the fact that you wanted to feel happy in your own skin. And so I'd love you to start there.
Okay. So thank you for the invite and to chat, because sometimes I just need reminders to go, actually, I've come a long way, because this is just how I do life now. And I think sometimes I kind of forget how far I have actually come. So I love these little reminders of actually sharing. And for me, I call it a crossroads moment. And that moment happened for me when I was attending a hospital appointment to see a specialist. And it was to see whether or not I actually had sleep apnea. And I didn't realize this as I was waiting, that I was going to have to be weighed and have my height recorded. I just thought, they'll show you into a room and you'll answer some questions. And so when the nurse got me to stand on the scales, I literally had no clue as to how much I weighed. And the numbers were right there in front of me, and they said 162.7 kilos. And this might sound strange, but I was shocked because I hadn't weighed myself in years. Yes, I had seen my GP for normal checkups, and sometimes she would weigh me, and I would say, sure, you can weigh me, but don't tell me the number. That's how I got around not knowing how much I weighed. I didn't want my worth defined by a number on the scales. So I couldn't help but see those numbers because they were flashing right in front of me. And I guess I found that really confronting. And I remember just crying. And I burst into tears. My poor husband wondered what had gone on. And I just said, I'm just shocked by the number. He didn't actually know what the number was. He didn't see it. So anyway, we go and have this appointment with the specialist, and it was just the normal breathing in and out and listening to my body, asking me a lot of questions. And I brought my husband, Mike, because he could answer some of the questions that I knew I couldn't, which was he had heard me stop breathing several times throughout the night. Now, if you've got sleep apnea, you don't know when you've stopped breathing. I just thought it happened a few times every now and again. And the only reason I thought that is because I would wake up gasping for air. My husband could handle my loud snoring, and it was extremely loud. Like my mum, when she came to stay with us one holiday, had her door closed. My mum she needs hearing aids. She takes them out at night. She could still hear me snoring from the other end of the house. So that's how loud it was. And so what concerned my husband was not the snoring, it was the deathly silence when I would stop breathing. So the specialist seemed to think that, yes, I did have sleep apnea, but I'd have to have an assessment and I'd get wired up to a machine. And I remember asking him, if I lost some weight, would that help? And he said, yes, it would, but I can't guarantee it will, it will get rid of sleep apnea. Like, you have this. Losing some weight would be really good for you, not only for the sleep apnea, but for a number of health reasons. And I remember leaving that appointment thinking, this is my crossroads moment. And I can keep on burying my head in the sand, or I can do something about it. But what I realized in that point, when we talked about sleep apnea in the assessment, is that I was going to have to use a machine to help me sleep. Now I get quite emotional about this because I realized in that moment I had a choice, and I needed to face up to the position that I'd found myself in. And I thought it was an accident that I had when I broke my ankle coming out of our front door, like a year and a half beforehand. I thought that was the reason that I put on weight. But what I'd realized is that it had been going on for a wee while when I found photos. And I could see it started from when I was in my 40s. I'm now 53. And I was 49 when I had that appointment. And I could see from 40 to 49, I'd slowly been putting on weight. And I'd been ignoring that. And I think in a roundabout way, when I fractured my ankle, it was a little accident, but it had a huge impact on my life. That was my body trying to get my attention and telling me I needed to slow down and start sorting out my health and well-being. But even then, I still ignored it, but I couldn't at that appointment because not only now was I dealing with sleep apnea, I was also pre-diabetic, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and I'd been ignoring those. Like my GP and I had a discussion about that. And I just thought, oh yeah, I'll sort it out. But I realized I was once again just putting my head in the sand. And that was in a roundabout way, my crossroads moment. And for me, people go, oh, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. I've lost around 79 kilos. And I've done that over a period of time. And I recognize that a lot of people go, oh, wow, you've lost a lot of weight. You must be happy. Yes, I am. But, you know, I hear a lot of people say, oh, when I lose that weight, I don't even want to go back to that person I was. But the woman I was pretty amazing. She had just lost her way. And she showed enough compassion for herself to say something needs to change. You can't do this on your own anymore. You need help. And as a woman, I found it hard to ask for help and say, I've actually got a problem. And what I've learned from my journey is that I didn't know how to express my emotions. So I ate mine.
Yeah.
And what I've identified is that at different stages of my life, I've used different vices to deal with not feeling things. So from my mid-40s, it was food. You know, in my early 40s, it was spending money. In my 30s, it was drinking. You know, it was different things at different stages. And I realized that I had to deal with why I was eating.
Yeah.
And yeah, I definitely feel more comfortable in my skin now. I always was. I just kind of felt like I'd lost my way. And was there a defining moment? It was several moments. I would say in my 40s, it was realizing that I wouldn't be able to have a child with my husband and dealing with that. It was my dad becoming sick and then later dying, and I was very close to him. It was closing down a business. So it was a whole number of things, and my way of dealing with it was to eat my emotions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love that you identified that, you know, eating was just one of the ways in which we often don't deal with our emotions. you know, because like you said, it can be drinking, it can be, you know, spending money, it can be gambling, you know. There's so many things that we use. It can be addicted to Netflix. Like so many things we use to numb and not think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was like, for a period of time, it was crappy reality TV. Don't get me wrong, I still like a bit of it now, but I'm talking like I could spend hours in front of the TV just because I didn't have to think.
Yeah. Oh, look, ditto. I mean, I definitely used alcohol for a lot of years. It was, you know, still bordering on socially, you know, the social drinking, but it was definitely a daily affair. So I didn't have to think. You know, I would actually do the same with reading. You know, we say, you know, back in the old days, you know, we would lose ourselves in books and we would just spend hours reading rather than dealing with the emotions that we need. Usually, it was usually a book with a block of chocolate, wasn't it?
For me, it was potato chips.
Oh, I'm the sweet tooth.
But yeah, it's just really interesting looking back and then sort of connecting these dots and recognizing that the reason I did that is I didn't know how to express these emotions, or some of it was conditioning, you know, like nice girls don't complain, nice girls just get on. Well, not nice girls, any kind of good girl just gets on with things. She picks herself up, she dusts herself off, and she just carries on and everything's fine. But when you don't deal with some of that stuff that's been going on, there comes a moment where it just won't go away and it's staring you in the face. And that is the gift of sleep apnea. Like I often say, sleep apnea made me change my life around, and for the better of it, because I had a non-existent relationship with my body. I was so disconnected from my body that even though physically I could see it in photos, I was putting on weight and I could feel it, I just adapted my lifestyle to get around these things. And so people go, well, what do you mean? I stopped catching the bus. I stopped looking for ways to be active throughout my day. I started catching taxis or Ubers. I'd have to sit in the back of a vehicle, because in the front of a vehicle, because I couldn't drop the seatbelt in the back. Or it would be so tight around my neck or my throat. So I'd always sit in the front. I'd walk into a building. If there was stairs or a lift, I'd take the lift. Because if I had to take the stairs, I'd have to stop several times and I'd be red-faced by the time I got to where I had to go. So I just started changing or modifying my lifestyle to accommodate my changing shape.
So I want to back up a bit, because a lot of these things that you've just been talking about are revelations that you've had on the journey. But when you had that pivotal moment with the sleep apnea and you realized that you knew there's something needed to change, it was your wake-up call and you needed help, you admitted that you needed help, what was that help that you first reached out for?
So if I'm being completely honest, before that appointment, I knew, like, my body was telling me, but I just kept on trying to shut it out. And so I realized that a lot of the back pain I was having, the discomfort, hey, I need to exercise. I need to move my body. So I laugh at this now because I was the ultimate couch potato. I had a relationship with exercise that I saw it as punishment. It was something to be endured, not enjoyed. And it was really interesting. So I was talking to a friend about this pain I was having, and she was talking about a personal trainer. And I thought, well, maybe that's what I need. but I didn't want to go to a gym. I didn't want to exercise in public. And she said, well, he might be able to come to you. So he and I had a Zoom chat, and he agreed to take me on, and he came to my house. So I paid him. So that was kind of like 6 months before I had that appointment. And we started doing my exercise in a dining room chair, because that was my limit. You know, that's all I could do at that point. And I just kind of want to do a shout out to Dan, because he's a gorgeous man. And we worked together for about 2.5 years, and now I've got a new personal trainer. But he was late 20s when we started working together, and he's working with a woman who's in her late 40s. And so hormones, you know, a perimenopausal lady, one who didn't have a great relationship with exercise, let alone her body, and was disconnected from it and hadn't exercised in years. And honestly, he had the patience of a saint. So he was my first port of call. I thought, exercise is going to be what I need to do, and I've got such a bad relationship with it. I'm going to start with that first. And through that, I started introducing more exercise over a period of time, so that by the end of the year, I started working with him in July. I was doing Pilates reformer 1-to-1 with another instructor. I was doing pull-based movement with another instructor, and yoga with another instructor. Now, I paid for all of these different women individually to work one-on-one with me, and it was the best investment.
Yeah, wow. And did all of that movement in all those different modalities change what you were eating? When did you start thinking about what you were eating?
Now, it's really interesting, because I thought, right, I'll just start with this and I'll look at nourishing my body the following year. But that was just me putting off the inevitable. Like, this is how I was negotiating with myself. I was like, I'll just wait until I get to this point before I look at this. So it did change slightly, but I still slipped into pre-diabetes. And that was the starting point when my doctor said to me, I think we need to look at this. We need to look at what you're eating. And I'm going to say I got quite defensive about that. And it's like, yeah, I got very defensive about that. And we had a frank and open discussion that when I'm ready to embark on that part of my journey, I will. And I can laugh about it now. We can both laugh about it. But it was the way that she delivered the message, I think, that I didn't quite appreciate. But what all of that exercise highlighted to me in that point, there was something off with my sleep. Because rather than feeling energized after movement, I was feeling really tired. I still wasn't sleeping well. I describe sleep apnea, when you don't know you've got it, it's like walking in wet concrete. Everything just seems to take more of an effort. So really it was that jumping on the scales, and a week later, I realized I needed help with nourishing my body. So it was still a good 9 months after I started moving my body before I did something about it. Yeah.
It's just fascinating, isn't it? Fascinating the way that our brain just wants to keep us safe, and we'll make up all sorts of reasons to keep us safe. You know, it's the best way of putting it, because, you know, that's what our body was designed to do. And change is difficult. You know, change is not easy. And, you know, I love that, you know, you just took one baby, you got help for starters. You know, I mean, I'm reminded of that over and over again. I mean, you know, you and I are both in the online business world. And I mean, goodness me, don't we get help all the time? Because it just makes life so much easier when you've got someone who's further ahead than you, has the knowledge and the expertise, and they just make the journey so much easier.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
I, I used to pride myself. I'm laughing at myself when I say that, as being very independent. And when I need help, I'll ask for it. But until then, just leave me alone. And what I realized is that sometimes you do have to be vulnerable, and you have to say, look, I can't do this on my own. I do need help. And having a supportive husband really, really helped. He was on board with me doing these sessions with other people, financially as well as emotionally.
Yeah.
And I also admit that I come from a place of privilege where I can access this. Not everybody has those resources, so I do acknowledge that. But I realize that sometimes you can go further when you've got some cheerleaders by your side. And I had done the gym before. I'm not a gym person.
Yeah.
Like I would have tried to slip in at the back and not be noticed, or I know how I think, and I would have negotiated myself out of not going to the gym.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're a bit sore today. Maybe you should just let your body rest. I would have had every excuse under the sun. And by investing in one-on-one help, I couldn't disappear. I had to show up. And some of those sessions with my personal trainer, I didn't do any exercise, but I'd just be a blubbering mess. But my trainer would just listen, and that's what I needed. And other times, I felt like I was moving mountains. Now, my progress compared to someone else's, it probably looked a bit, whoa, is she even exercising? But I didn't really care about what anyone else was doing. I was measuring my own progress. And one thing I embraced was just little steps over time adds up to huge progress.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just reminded of a study that I heard told at a money, it was a money webinar that I went to. And, he said they took people who were self-proclaimed couch potatoes and had them running 5 kilometres 3 times a week. Now, this time period was huge. I think it might have even been over a couple of years, but they started where they were at now, which was all sitting in front of the television. And the first step was just to stand up. You know what I mean? And then I think the next step, a couple of weeks later might have been just to march on the spot. But so not only were they tiny incremental changes, there was also accountability. And I think that is huge. And what I wanted to say to anyone listening to this is, if you don't have the financial means, like Janine did, I'm sure that most of us have, someone in our lives who will just go for a gentle walk with us, or, be accountable in some way. I mean, as women, we love helping. Part of our nature is we're just such, rescuers and helpers. And so, yeah, I think that's why we love doing the jobs that we do. Do you know what I mean? Helping women find that freedom that we've found.
Yeah, and I think that's what it's what I talk about in my book, is that, it doesn't always have to cost money. There are a lot of community groups that run free classes.
Yeah.
There's Zoom. You can, if you've got an internet connection, you can find a lot of free classes on YouTube.
Yeah.
You can get together a group of friends and say, hey, look, why don't we get together once a week and walk and talk and catch up? It doesn't always have to be paid one-to-one, but I do also acknowledge that that's where I started, and it has paid off. And that was coming up 3 years ago. And now I do Pilates at home. I use a class format, and I pay a subscription to do their classes. I do a yoga practice. One of them is just on YouTube, and the other one is a paid class with an amazing instructor in Australia, because my instructor gave up yoga after COVID. She had a change of what she wanted to do. I still see a PT, but it's a different one, because the lovely Dan has changed his lifestyle as well. And I see her once a fortnight now, whereas initially I was seeing Dan weekly. And I have a home program that I do, and I'm motivated to keep moving my body now that I can do it myself. And I've gone from someone who hated exercise and no exercise to moving my body and enjoying it 5 to 6 days a week. And I love variety. And I think the biggest thing that I discovered was trying new things and finding out what lights me up exercise-wise. It's not always going to a gym. And I want to share an example is walking. I had a love-hate relationship with walking. Really, really did not like it. And when COVID happened, that was the gift of COVID. It gave me the joy of walking. I live in an area where there's lots of inclines. It's not on the flat. And when New Zealand was in lockdown, we were only allowed to exercise within 5 k's of our home. So we couldn't really go anywhere in the car, because in our neighbourhood is predominantly inclines. So I said to my husband, will you walk with me? And he said, yes. Now I sound quite mad, and I probably am, but this is how I got through it, right? I said, I want you to walk with me, but I don't want you to talk to me. Because I like listening to music when I walk. So I said, I just need you to be there with me, but I don't need you to talk to me. And I know it sounds weird, but this is how we made it work. And what I did is I just created a little walking route. And so I thought, I'm only just doing this until we get out of lockdown and until I can get back to my regular classes. And funnily enough, after we got out of lockdown, I still continued walking on my own with my music. And now I walk 5 k's around our neighbourhood, and I don't think anything of it. But I didn't start off walking 5 k's. It was just, I'll just walk to that street. I'll just walk to that power pole, and then I'll turn around. So I slowly built up to that.
Yeah. And so what is your relationship with food now?
Right. Well, it's in a better space than what it was. I like to call it nourishing my body. So I still eat potato chips.
Yeah.
Do I sit in front of the couch and inhale them in one sitting? No. So my specialty was I could eat 150-gram bag of potato chips in one sitting and still be hungry. Now what I do is I put some in a bowl and I savor them. I really taste it. And I can leave the bag unopened and not finish it off in one sitting. Did that happen right away? Yeah, no. But it's been a period of, it's been an evolution. If anything, I eat more vegetables now, and I didn't have a great relationship with vegetables because as a child, I was forced to eat everything on my plate. Grew up in a generation where vegetables were boiled within an inch of their life. And I was a very slow eater. So I developed these little techniques as a kid where I would be the last one at the table. And if no one was looking and they're in another room, I would either give them to the dog. If it was winter, they'd go in our wood burner that was in the kitchen. Or I'd put them down the toilet. Like I'd eat some of it while my parents were watching, but I really did not like vegetables. I eat a lot of salads, even all year round, because I like the crunch, I like the text, and it is the texture thing for me. I do include vegetables in my meals, but I like vegetables and I like them as salads. I eat a lot more legumes. We do meat-free Monday in our household, and we've done that for a couple of years. I try new recipes, and just to get out of that sort of, when you just kind of default to the same things time and time again. So I menu plan.
Oh, this is just music to my ears. Legumes, menu planning, vegetables.
Yeah, but once again, I didn't go from eating. We ate a lot of takeaways, probably, I would say, leading up to that, because I didn't have a lot of energy. So I still eat takeaways. It's just that our choice of takeaways has changed, and we have it once a week, and how I eat it has changed. I haven't eaten McDonald's or KFC since February, what are we now? We're 22, 2020, 19. I can't remember how long it's been. Because once I looked at the kilojoule count and things like that, I went, it's not nourishing my body.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's also just about nourishing. It is changing that relationship around food. That there's no good food or bad food. It's just food. And I was giving things labels.
Yeah. I love that. I wrote a blog not so long ago about, even the word diet has such preconceived ideas. Diet comes with, lettuce and carrots, a lettuce leaf and a carrot, or the promise of weight loss. I try so much in the way that I, speak to my clients, and to not use the word diet in that way, because it has to become a lifestyle. It has to become easy, has to become a way of life. And, the diet has that on-off mentality, or even the good and the bad, because what does good mean? Good means I've been good today, which means that I can overeat over here. You know what I mean? Our words are so important, and have a big part to play in changing that diet mentality to a lifestyle, but not a lifestyle of deprivation, like you say, a lifestyle of saying, how can I nourish my body today? That part of self-love and self-care is nourishing, So, and that still has a part for, like the chips and, the chocolate for me. It was Mother's Day yesterday. Of course I had chocolate.
and I still have alcohol, but it's only on occasion, because, amongst all of this stuff was perimenopause as well.
Yeah.
And with sleep apnea, drinking alcohol is not great for that. So I was like, okay, so I can still have a drink now and again. I never drank to excess, definitely in my 40s because of hormones. But, I didn't feel like anything was off limits.
Yeah.
But I've just changed the way that I look at things. And, it's simple things too, like I never used to have breakfast.
Oh, my goodness me. Yeah.
Because I told myself, I don't feel like eating in the morning. So then what would happen is that I'd sort of get to around 11ish and I'd be really hungry. So I'd just eat whatever. And I was very much, I don't even know what it was. I just eat whatever was around. And I worked with a woman for a short period of time who did like intuitive eating. And her thing is that you've trained yourself and told yourself that you can't eat breakfast, but I'm going to challenge you to eat breakfast. And so I started doing that work with her before I did any of this. And so I eat sort of 4 to 5 times a day. I have different snacks throughout the day. And that is all part of that menu planning, because the less I have to think about things, the easier it is for me. And it's like doing things like once a month, I will create snacks like bliss balls or slices that I can cook and then portion up and freeze. So I've always got something in the freezer. And it's things like even my breakfast, like just before I got on this Zoom, I've made overnight oats for a couple of my breakfasts this week.
Yeah. I mean, I just love this. I totally concur. I always make my breakfast the night before. And just always do that prepping and knowing what you're going to eat. And I have to say that I've been in this game for 30 years. And one of the common things about people who struggle with their weight is that they don't eat breakfast.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, it is so common. And I've got a client who has recently lost 50 kilos. She's now down to the 100 mark. And one of the things that we discovered only recently is that when she has breakfast, now this is for her, breaking her fast is around about 10 o'clock when she feels like eating, and that's fine. She's 72, who cares? But that has changed, that has balanced out her hunger for the rest of the day. She's not as, she's not feeling as hungry in the afternoon. She's not snacking after dinner. And I was listening to a podcast about all the research into time-restricted eating. And it was really just eating within a 10-hour window, rather than, eating from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed. But what the research shows is that you have better glucose balancing, a better blood glucose levels when you eat breakfast in preference to waiting until lunch. And even if the calories were the same and all the rest of it, everything kept the same. If you ate breakfast, you had better blood sugar levels for the rest of the day. And, I just find that fascinating, because it's just, goes hand in hand with, like you say, just not necessarily, eating, it just, what am I trying to say here? It's just not helpful to not eat breakfast.
Yeah, well, it sounds simple, but I had such a block about it until I did this work with this woman. But the really interesting thing is that because I had sleep apnea, my mind was not very good at times. So I would have quite huge mood swings because of a lack of sleep. And sometimes I wouldn't make good decisions. And that was also around food. When I got the machine, because it was confirmed, not only did I have sleep apnea, I had severe sleep apnea. So it turns out that I would stop breathing 114 times. And I was like, oh, that'll be why I'm so tired. That's why, sometimes I only get 1 or 2 hours of sleep a night, or why I felt like crap. And so the machine, as much as I disliked using it, and I did struggle initially with learning how to use it, it made a huge difference. What the people who are working with me in terms of exercise noticed is that the dark rings under my eyes started to disappear. I wasn't yawning my way through a class, that they weren't having to give me as much break times in a class because I actually had a little bit more energy.
Wow.
And then I started to get a bit lippy with them, and in a smart way, because I'm quite down to earth, but I was answering back or giving them more cheek because my brain was actually getting some rest. I was getting rest. And so my natural sassy attitude was coming back again.
Wow. Yeah.
And I hadn't realized how much sleep apnea had impacted not only on me physically, but mentally and emotionally. So I set myself a goal, which was I wanted to reduce my severe sleep apnea to mild. That was a big goal, especially when the specialist said, it won't happen. I was like, I'll show you, is what I was saying to myself. So a year after my original assessment, I got reassessed, and I had to pay for that to do that privately. And I dropped from severe down to moderate. Now, most people would be happy with that because I dropped from 114 episodes to 20. That's huge. I didn't realize that. So for a couple of months, I was like, oh, I'm a failure. I only dropped to moderate. I only reduced it to 20. And it wasn't until the year after I had a second reassessment. And I had the original woman who had assessed me 2 years ago. She said, oh, wow, we were really impressed with the results from your first reassessment. That's virtually unheard of. I went, really? And it was because of COVID, you see. They would have done a follow-up face-to-face, but I just got a report. And so I just thought, well, I'm a failure.
Yeah.
Now, if I'd had this conversation with them, I would have thought, wow, that's something to be proud of. But no, I saw it as something that I'd failed at. Clearly, I've got really high expectations for myself. So when I had this second reassessment, I dropped again from 20 down to 6. So that's still huge. So if I was to turn up to the hospital today, I wouldn't qualify for a machine because they would say, you're not severe enough. So that was in August last year, and I stopped using the machine. I haven't used it since. And I sleep fine.
Wow.
6 months after I started changing what I was nourishing my body and how I was nourishing it, I dropped out of pre-diabetes. I reduced my cholesterol, reduced my blood pressure, and my GP likes to check in with me on those things once a year. I just had a blood test last week for pre-diabetes. I've dropped it further again from a year ago, and I'm like, yes, like, this is just how I do life. Yeah.
Well done, Janine. That is just such an encouraging story, you know, just real life, tiny baby steps, one thing at a time, and getting the help and the accountability to, you know, make it happen. Yeah. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. It has just been amazing. And you wrote a book called Changes Afoot. And it's all about your inner journey and about, you know, self-love and self-care. Can you quickly tell us how, you know, why did you decide to write that book?
Well, I think it was healing because it was following my dad's death, and actually it was really healing to kind of write that. Might have been a couple of years after he passed away, but just recognizing that I was very much go, go, go. And what I recognized as my little accident was my body's way of getting my attention and saying something has to change. And looking back now, I didn't quite recognize it quite at that time, but I was very disconnected from my body. And so that book there talks about that accident and about grief, but also just it talks about my exercise journey. And I share one of the funny stories about exercise, how I got stuck in a Pilates reformer and I had to have the instructor and someone else, and it just happened to be a man in the class. They literally had to pull me out of the machine because I could not lift myself out. And I still turned up the following week. Like I share where I started with in my exercise journey. And what I'm just doing at the moment is finishing off my second manuscript, and that talks about the sleep apnea, and that's essentially what started me on my nourishing journey. So
yes. Hungry for change. I love that.
Yeah, Hungry for Change, and that's coming out in July. And it's more like journal prompts as well, because a lot of this journey is doing the inner work and recognizing, okay, if I'm not going to use food to self-soothe, that means maybe I should start thinking about this stuff and working with this stuff. And a lot of what helped me was journaling, and also getting coaches from other coaches in different areas of my life, and just recognizing that sometimes you've got to do that inner work to make some progress in other areas of your life. And for me, my health and well-being needed an overhaul. And, you know, like you said, this is just my lifestyle now.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Janine. This has just been really encouraging, and I'm sure that this will be just so helpful to, you know, my audience and your audience in just, you know, just giving them that encouragement and that inspiration to know what is your crossroads and what might be the appropriate, you know, first step for you to take. So I'm going to pop all of your links in the show notes. And anything last that you wanted to add?
Just want to say thank you for your time, Nick. Like I said, it's a really good moment to just stop and reflect. And I think the biggest gift that we can give ourselves is a little bit of our own time and attention. And you don't have to overhaul all of your life overnight. Just break it down into baby steps, because this didn't happen overnight. I didn't put on the weight overnight. I didn't lose it overnight. I've changed different elements of my health and well-being, my sleep, how I nourish my body, how I move my body, and also my mindset. Yeah, exactly. It's that whole holistic approach. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Thank you. Mwah.